Today we're going to talk about adding integers. Remember, integers are your positive and negative whole numbers, and today we're going to talk about adding them. Mine's going to be on page 51. Now you guys have been adding integers since elementary school, but you've only been adding positive integers. So for example, you guys all know how to add a positive number plus another positive number, because that's all you've been doing since elementary school, positive plus positive. So for example, 3 plus 2. Now I know you guys all know what 3 plus 2 is. 3 plus 2 is 5. Now how would we model that though? So how we model that is we start with a box, and in our box we started with 3 positives. So in our box we're going to put in 3 positives. Now what are we doing to the box? We are adding in 2 more positives. So in my picture I'm going to do a little arrow, and I'm going to show you that I'm going to add in 2 positives. Now what happens when I add in 2 positives? Well, then my box looks like this. It's got the 3 positives, and it also has 2 more positives. So you can see in my box I now have 5 positives. So the answer is 5. Like I said, you guys already knew that that would be 5, right? But that's how we would model a positive plus a positive. Now what about a positive plus a negative? So what happens when we have a positive number and we add it to a negative number? Okay. Now I always think of positive numbers as money that you have, and negative numbers are is like money that you owe. It's debt, right? If you owe somebody money, that's debt that you have. So let's start off with an example. Okay. Let's say that we have 7 positives, so like $7, and we're going to add in 3 negatives. Now, I wrote it this way with the parentheses. These are not absolute value signs. I think some kids were confused and thought this equals positive 3 because they were thinking absolute value. Remember, absolute value, like this, have straight bars. That's taking the absolute value. That equals 12. This is not the absolute value of negative 3. It's just negative 3. Okay. If you don't like writing the parentheses, some people write it without the parentheses like that. I just don't like the 2 signs so close, so I like to separate it. Okay, but you can write it this way if you like. Now, to model this, my box starts off with 7 positives. So you put 7 positives in your box. Okay. And what are we adding into our box? We're adding in 3 negatives. So now when we add them in, our box looks like this. And then you also have 3 negatives. Now when you have positives and negatives, they cancel each other out. It's like I gave you $1, but then I took away the $1. So then what are you left with? 0. So this positive and this negative cancel each other out, and they become 0. So this becomes 0, this becomes 0, and this becomes 0. So basically they disappear. Okay, they become 0, they disappear. And so then what are you left with in the box? You are now left with 4 positives. Now if you think about this in terms of money, it makes sense. If you have $7 but you owe somebody $3, well then you're only going to be left with $4 because you have to pay the person back, right? If you have $3 debt, you're going to have to pay them back. Okay, so if you have $7 in the account, but let's say you owe the bank 3, then you're only going to be left with 4, because what they're going to do is they're going to take $3 from your 7. Okay, because remember, negative means money that you owe. So you owe $3. There. Let's do another one. Okay, this time, let's start with a negative. Let's say we have negative 6, and we're going to add in, oops, I don't need the parentheses here. Actually, I can erase this. Let's say we add in 2. Okay? So in our picture, we have 6 negatives. And you can see that I am going to add in 2 positives. So what is my picture going to look like when I am done adding in the 2 positives? Well, I still have my 6 negatives here. And now I also have 2 positives. Now again, when you have positives and negatives together in the box, what happens? They cancel each other out. So this positive cancels out with this one, this positive cancels out with this one. So these 2 cancel and these 2, they become 0. So then what are you left with in the box? 4 negative. Okay. Now, this makes sense because if you think about it in terms of money, you owe someone $6 and you give them 2. Now that $2 only covers what? $2 of what you owe them. So you still have to owe them $4, right? So if you have $6 debt and you pay them 2, you still owe them 4, which is why it's -4. Now, here, when a positive plus a negative, when we do that, sometimes it gives us a positive, sometimes it gives us a negative. Now notice that here it gave us a positive because the positive number was larger than the negative, right? So if you have more positives than negatives, when you cancel them out, you're going to be left with some positives. Here you have more negatives than positives, so when you added in your negatives, well, they were only able to cancel, these 2 positives were only able to cancel out with 2 of the negatives, so you still have negatives left over. So since the negative is larger, your answer is going to be negative, okay? You had more debt here and you didn't pay enough to cover the debt, so you still owe money. Here, you had $7, you owed 3, so you had enough to cover this debt and have money left over. So you can always think about it in terms of money if you're confused. Okay? But this is how we model positive plus negative. Now, our last example for modeling. This time, let's add a negative plus a negative. Now, what do you think happens when we have a negative and we add in more negatives? So that's like debt and then plus more debt. Are you going to get any money from this? If you have debt and you're adding more debt, no, you're going to be in more debt, right? So a negative plus a negative will always give you a negative. So for example, if I had -4 to start off with, so I already owe $4, and then I add in another -3, which means I owe another $3. So there's debt, and then there's more debt. I owe this person $4, I owe another person $3. How much do I owe altogether? Now, the picture, we would start off with the 4 negatives in the box. There's our 4 negatives, and we are adding in 3 more negatives. So then when we are done, our box looks like this. 4 negatives and then 3 negatives. Is there anything I can cancel out here? No. You need a positive and a negative to cancel out to make 0, right? If I give you $1 and then I take away $1, that's how you get 0. Here, you owe $1 and then you owe another $1, so that's $2 you owe, right? So here, how much do you owe now? You have 7 negatives, so you owe $7. Okay, that makes sense because if you owe one person 4 and another person 3, then altogether you owe 7. Let's do one more example like this. Let's say this time we have -2 plus -6. So here you owe $2 and then you owe another $6. The picture, we would have 2 negatives and then we are adding in 6 more negatives. So then when we are done, our picture looks like this. Nothing to cancel out because there's no positives to cancel out with negatives. So what you have in your box is 8 negatives. So your answer for -2 plus -6 equals -8. Okay. Now, we can't always draw pictures. So if I gave you something a little larger. You're not going to want to draw all the circles. Let's say I gave you negative 20, and then we're going to add in 5 to that. You're not going to want to draw in 20 negatives into your box, okay? So this is when you start picturing it in your head. In my box, I have 20 negatives. If I add in 5 positives, what's going to happen? Well, when you have positives and negatives in your box, they cancel each other out. So these 5 positives that I'm going to add into the box will cancel out with 5 of the negatives. Now, does it cancel all the negatives? No, it does not. These 5 positives cancel out 5 negatives, but I still am going to have what? 15 negatives left over. So this is when you start moving away from the picture and just picturing it in your head, because you don't want to draw all this out. Now, if you're still having a hard time picturing it, then yes, draw it out to help you, okay? But once the numbers start getting a little bigger, you're not going to want to model every single question. Now, think of it in terms of money. That always helps too. Here you owe somebody $20. You give them 5. Do you still owe them money? Yeah, but a little less, right? It takes a little bit away from the debt. So then now you only owe them 15. So you can think of it that way as well. Okay, let's do another one without drawing pictures. Here, let's say you have 18 positives, so that's like $18, and you add in 6 negatives. Now again, you probably don't want to draw 18 positives. So imagine that you have 18 positives in the box and you add in 6 negatives. What happens when you add in 6 negatives? Well, those negatives are going to cancel out with some of your positives, right? These 6 negatives is going to cancel out with 6 of the positives. Are you going to have some positives left over? Yes, you are. But not 18 anymore, because these 6 negatives will cancel out with 6 positives. So then you're going to be left with only 12 positives. Now, if you think of it in terms of money, here you have $18, but you owe somebody $6. If you owe them $6, you're going to have to pay them, and so then you're going to only be left with 12. So as the numbers get bigger, you can picture it in your head instead of drawing it all out. Or think of it in terms of money. That always helps me. Thinking of it in terms of money.